On average, we're expecting widespread 2 to 5 inches of rain, locally 6 inches, maybe slightly higher, again, isolated locations, but on average 2 to 5 inches. The rain starts to shift south and east across Southern California later this evening and into tonight through tomorrow. So the heaviest rain for Southern California is expected primarily tomorrow. On average, 1 to 3 inches for the southern part of the state, locally up to 5 inches across some of the southern mountains, mainly some of the higher elevations across Southern California. And for the Central Valley area, generally 1 to 3 inches. You get into the northern Sacramento Valley, could get up to about 4 inches of rain based on some local effects there. But all in all, much, if not the entire portion of the state, is expecting measurable rainfall as we head through today and tomorrow. Now, on the next slide, we're going to shift more towards some of the snowfall information. We are talking about higher snows, high snow freezing levels is what I'm trying to say for this first part of the system. So freezing levels are gradually going to be lowering today and tomorrow as the storm system moves across the state. Highest snowfall for today through tomorrow for the higher Sierra elevations, including the Mount Shasta area, 1 to 3 feet of snow. Again, 1 to 3 feet, mainly for the higher elevations. Across Southern California, once you get above about 7,000 feet, we're expecting anywhere up to about 18 inches, 12 to 18 inches on average. And once you're below 7,000 feet, we're generally closer to about 6 inches or less. Again, that's just because the freezing level is so high right now. Now, as the storm system continues to move on through, those snow levels, the freezing levels, gradually going to be lowering down. So snow levels by tomorrow and especially Friday across the northern part of the state down to about 2,000 feet, and by Thursday and Friday down to about 4,500 feet for the southern part of the state. The next slide, we're going to be talking about wind impacts. There is a lot of wind energy with this system, though not necessarily as strong of winds as some of the past storm systems we've had across the state. For northern and central California, on average, 35 to 45 mile per hour sustained winds. Gusts up to about 60 miles per hour for some of the higher elevations and some of the highest elevations across northern and central California. Some of those mountain tops could briefly gust around 75 miles per hour, but again, most areas, the peak gust should be closer to 60 miles per hour or less. Again, that's mainly today and into tonight for northern and central California. By tomorrow and through Friday, again, that storm system moving across the state, Southern California mountains and into the Mojave Desert could have gusts of 35 to 55 miles per hour, again, spreading through the southern half of the state tomorrow and Friday. And we could have a little bit in the way of power outages, some weakened trees blow down. But the main impacts with this first storm system are going to be really a lot of impacts from the heavy rain. Again, damaging winds across the northern and central part of California may bring some pockets of tree damage and some power outages. But again, the main impact is going to be runoff from heavy rainfall. That's probably going to result in flooding of some waterways across both northern and southern California. And we're going to see some rises in the water levels along rivers, creeks, and streams. If you're in a typical flood-prone location, keep an eye to the water levels. Those could quickly begin to rise if we get into a period of heavy rainfall. And typical low water crossings will likely become water covered at times. Talking about specific river levels, again, we're going to see some rise on the rivers, especially across the northern coast and into the Sacramento River system. But even farther to the south, the San Diego River near Fashion Valley is kind of our pinpointed area for also having some higher impact areas. And of course, the heavy mountain snow will bring is traditional travel impacts at times through late week as the snow begins to pile up. And one last slide I have, in addition to the weather impacts today, tomorrow, and Friday, we'll get a bit of a reprieve Saturday before the next atmospheric river begins to move into the area starting Sunday. Still a little bit of a question as to the onset timing on Sunday, but especially the first half of next work week are really going to see the next storm system moving in, maybe continuing at times into the second half of the week. And there may be, not as positive news for next week, as next week's rainfall and snowfall could be even more impactful than what we're expecting over the next couple of days, especially the southern half of the state next week, mainly because the next storm system may be tracking just a little farther south than the current one. But even across the north next week, the next round of precipitation could provide even significant snowfall amounts again, because the freezing level and snow level is going to be even lower. So that is the end of the report I have. I will turn it back over to Cal OES.
Thank you so much, Robert. Really appreciate your time. Just a reminder too, for our Spanish language media outlets, también le podemos dar una entrevista en español. We are here available in Spanish as well. And with that, I will hand it over to Brian Ferguson, our Deputy Director of Crisis Communication and Public Affairs at Cal OES.
Helps to be unmuted. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us, particularly to our media partners, as we kind of get the word out to each of you about really the severe magnitude of what we face, not just this week, but over the next 10 to 14 days. We view this storm as a significant threat to the safety of Californians. And what you're going to be hearing about today from myself and all the other first responder organizations on the call is really an all-in state response to protect public safety. As many of you experienced and covered last year, floods are one of the most dangerous disasters we have here in the state. Nationally, flooding and water kills more folks than wildfires and earthquakes every year. And it's certainly something that we are very cognizant of, having tragically lost more than 20 lives during the flooding that we experienced last winter and spring. As you likely saw yesterday, Governor Newsom has activated the State Operations Center here in Mather, California, to coordinate a holistic and all-in state response, partnering with local agencies who are on the ground in the communities, keeping folks safe, and also working very closely with our federal partners as needed to bring in resources and activate support for folks on the ground as this event continues. What we are looking at is not just what's going to happen today and tomorrow, but that this is a longer duration event, that this is something that is going to take this week into next week and maybe even the following week after that. And so that is why the level of concern is high at the state level, is not just the localized impacts, but the duration of the impacts and the wide geographic distribution of the challenges. As you heard from the National Weather Service a moment ago, the impacts extend from the North Coast, almost near the Oregon border, all the way down to San Diego, towards our border with Mexico. So, and it also is going to impact our coastal communities all the way up to snow impacts in our mountain communities. So this really is a broad width of California that's going to see threats over the coming week. That's why we're leaning forward. We're talking to you today in many parts to say we're actually under blue skies, because we want to be early and proactive on our emergency response efforts, and be on the front foot. Disasters are not a game where we want to play catch up. And so that's why it's important to talk to you today, because we'd also like to get the word out to Californians so they can understand the impacts and the important role they play in a disaster. One of the things that we're concerned about is not just the rain, but the wind. There is significant opportunities for widespread power outages. We know particularly for the most vulnerable Californians, often those that rely on durable medical equipment or insulin or other things that require electricity. That's something we're looking very closely at. The same thing with how do we protect the other vulnerable members of our communities, whether that's farm workers who work in the fields where we saw significant impacts last year, individuals experiencing homelessness who may be living or camping in low-lying and flood-prone areas. And so there's an intensive effort underway today to do outreach to those groups and to really have the state partner with locals to get the word out so that we can hopefully keep all Californians safe during this disaster. There are also parts of our state, particularly in San Diego, that are still recovering from a round of storms that we saw last week. So that's an acute need that we're paying close attention to, of the communities that may be at greater risk because they just experienced another storm. We're going to come back at the end and kind of give you a few more pointers and areas of emphasis that we want to emphasize to Californians. But as we go through the presentations today, what we hope you'll take away is that California is leaning in and being very proactive to do everything we can do to prepare for these storms on the front end. And we're happy to take your questions at the end. I'm going to throw it back to Deanna, but want you to know that Cal OES is a resource for you as reporters as we go forward. If there are questions you have or localized impacts, we view that as a two-way conversation. And so very happy and eager to answer any additional offline questions or inquiries you may have. I'm going to throw it back to Deanna, and we'll talk to you at the end.
Thanks so much, Brian. Really appreciate that recap on everything the state is doing. With that, I'm going to hand it over to the Department of Water Resources, Deputy Director John Pash.
I thank you, Deanna. California is prepared and has resources ready. Department of Water Resources manages the State Federal Flood Operations Center, a partnership between DWR and our partners at the National Weather Service. The FOC has elevated its readiness, operating under extended hours, and the California Nevada River Forecast Center, in collaboration with DWR, forecast river levels at over 100 locations. And it's currently a 24-hour operation, producing an updated forecast every 6 hours throughout the duration of this storm event. The Flood Center is making high water notification calls to local flood managers in locations forecast to reach monitor stage. And for reference, when a river location reaches monitor stage, these notifications to local flood emergency managers trigger proactive monitoring of the flood system. And when a location reaches flood stage, which is higher, it triggers heightened awareness and 24-hour levee patrols. Daily, the California Nevada River Forecast Center and DWR are conducting weather and hydrology briefings. These began last Friday and will again continue through the storm event. And these weather and hydrology briefings are followed by reservoir coordinated operations discussions with the major water managers controlling flood space in our reservoirs. Our groundwater management teams are in contact with local water managers to enable aquifer recharge where opportunities present themselves. And since the start of 2023, DWR has conducted 39 flood fight training courses to over 1,000 individual members of state, local, and tribal emergency response agencies statewide. And we've really bulked up our flood fight materials, which now includes 5 million sandbags that have been pre-positioned at 64 locations statewide for quick deployment if they're needed. Our flood fight specialists are on notice and stand ready for deployment if needed. And we've also been in contact with our federal partners at the Army Corps of Engineers, confirming their materials and resources will be available if needed. And thank you for allowing me to share this message. I'll pass it back to Cal OES.
Thank you so much, Department of Water Resources. Really appreciate that overview of some of the work that you guys are doing in California. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Caltrans, our Acting Deputy Director, Sergio Aceves.
Thank you, Deanna, and good morning, everybody. First of all, I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to talk about what Caltrans is doing. As always, I want to emphasize that for us, our top priority is safety. We want our roads to be safe for all travelers and our workers, even through some of the most difficult conditions. We are working with our partners and our crews across the state to quickly mobilize our fleet and personnel to be ready wherever and whenever they might be needed. This includes pre-positioning of equipment at critical locations in anticipation of flooding, slides, or snow operations. Just for everyone's awareness, we have approximately 1,200 pieces of equipment that are available for use and are being used for snow operations up and down the state, from the northern tip of the state to our southern end. In addition, in case of flooding, crews are pre-positioning, if needed, water pumps in flood-prone areas that we know of to make sure that, and we're also making sure that our storm drains are clear of debris. We also check our portable backup generators, making sure they're fully fueled and functioning, as well as stocking up on retroreflective signs in case of power outages, as well as in case we need to sign detours due to road closures. Our traffic management centers have prepared electronic messaging to inform the public of travel conditions. We will also be monitoring burn scar areas from recent wildfires for slide potentials. These are areas that may be more prone to slide and slip outs, and for those reasons, we monitor those. We also monitor our bridges at river levels in case they rise, and to make sure that we can mitigate the increase in water flows. If needed, our crews are available to work extended shifts depending on weather conditions to maintain our roadways safe. We are in communication with local contractors in case we need a more robust response in case of a slide or a slip out where we may need major road repairs. So we've already pre-positioned our folks to talk to those contractors and get them on board as soon as possible. I also want to talk a little bit about important driving tips for everybody during harsh weather conditions. Please inspect your vehicle before a trip, especially your tire pressure, windshield wipers, and tire tread. Make sure you have a full fuel tank available before a trip, or if it's an electric vehicle, a fully charged vehicle. You don't want to be looking for fuel or being low on fuel when you're up in the mountains, obviously. Recommend to always carry chains and blankets when you go up to the mountains. Keep your cell phones fully charged. And please never go around any of our road closures or barricades. They are there for your safety. Please do not do that, as that will imperil not just you as a driver, but our crews that are out there doing their work. I encourage, if you haven't done so, for everybody to download the Caltrans Quick Map application to get the most up-to-date weather conditions, as well as please look out for our emergency crews and first responders. Slow down when driving through our work zones, and also, if possible, move over when you see our flashing amber lights. That means that we're working on the side of the road for your safety. It is our job to get you there in the safest way possible, and we believe that by following these guidelines, you and other travelers of the road will have a safer voyage. I also want to say just a few words in Spanish for our Spanish-speaking folks. Sergio Aceves con Caltrans. Quiero decirles que la seguridad de ustedes como viajeros es nuestra prioridad número uno. Estamos aquí para servirles. Por lo tanto, tenemos más de 1,200 pedazos de equipo disponibles para remover la nieve de los caminos y asegurar que usted pueda llegar a su destino de una forma segura. Favor de informarse con nuestra aplicación Quick Maps, también con nuestros mensajes electrónicos para que ustedes puedan informarse las condiciones de camino hacia su destino. Y por último, en su vehículo, a favor de llevar un tanque lleno de gasolina o una carga llena de electricidad si es eléctrico, verificar su limpiabrisas, presión de aire en sus llantas y también llevar cadenas cuando suban a las montañas. Muchas gracias. Que tengan buen día. That's all I have. Back to you, Diana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caltrans and Sergio, for that overview. With that, I'm going to hand it over to CAL FIRE, our Deputy Director of Communications, Nick Schuler.
Good morning to our media partners. I'd like to begin by expressing our gratitude for your ongoing support in ensuring that our communities remain informed, aware, and prepared for the upcoming weather event. CAL FIRE, along with our partner agencies, stand committed to providing a coordinated and rapid deployment of resources before, during, and after this weather system, just as we do for all events throughout California. Over the past week, CAL FIRE resources have been assisting our local government partners during the storm in San Diego County. In fact, on Monday, January 22nd, our Swiftwater rescue team successfully rescued 2 individuals who were trapped as they attempted to drive their vehicle through moving water in the community of Bonita. As we speak, our hand crews are actively engaged in recovery efforts, having filled more than 15,000 sandbags in hard-to-hit neighborhoods in Spring Valley and assisting with debris removal in and around homes. This labor-intensive work is a testament to our dedication to public service, providing immediate support to the families who've been impacted by these destructive storms. As we prepare for the challenges ahead, California's robust master mutual aid system will likely be on display as agencies across the state support one another. CAL FIRE has staffed additional four-wheel drive engines, swift water rescue teams, and we have 5 hand crews that currently are mission tasked in supporting recovery efforts in San Diego County. These resources are in addition to our daily staffing that represent a vast response capability across California. However, we also rely on the public to do their part. Today, not tomorrow, is the time to talk with your family, support your elderly neighbors, and ensure that you are prepared. Being prepared will undoubtedly save you from unimaginable grief that we've seen this past week. Have an evacuation plan, a go bag with essential medications and necessary documents. Plan for your pets. Ensure you have a full tank of gas, like what's been said before. Do not drive through moving water. And most importantly, if you are asked to evacuate, please do so without hesitation. For additional information, we encourage folks to follow our website at fire.ca.gov, as well as all of our social media content. And I point out that swiftwater rescue on the slide deck are images of that occurring last week. Deanna, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. Really appreciate the information from CAL FIRE. With that, I'm going to hand it over to General Paoletti, Director of the Joint Staff for the California Military Department, to talk about their resources. General.
Good morning. The California National Guard stands ready to support the state as a state-level resource through the California Office of Emergency Services. We are postured very well this weekend to support any needs that the state might have, as a majority of our units are already doing their normal drill training throughout the state this weekend. So that will allow us a more rapid response from those units that are already drilling. And those include our high water vehicles, or our LMTVs you see in the picture on the right. The picture in the middle is actually from last January, where we were assisting Swiftwater Rescue with some of those rescues in Pajaro. We also have aviation search and rescue assets, as well as general aviation that can respond. We have military police that can assist local jurisdictions with traffic control around the flooded area. And we also have a lot of general engineering, heavy engineering equipment that can come and help with debris flows, as we did in Montecito last January, and a lot of general transportation capabilities. So as always, the Guard is always ready, always there, and we stand ready to support Cal OES in responding to the state's needs. And I'll hand it back to OES.
Thank you so much, General. Really appreciate your time and that information. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to Brian Ferguson to kind of wrap us up a little bit, to give us those 5 key tips that we want everyone to walk away with. Brian?
Thank you, Deanna, and thank you everyone who's joined today, the partners. What we'll hope you'll take away as we go forward is that this really is a all-in state response, that all of the essential personnel, first responders are being pre-positioned. We're leaning forward early to keep folks safe. We also would like to emphasize to our media partners that the hardest thing to control in any disaster is human behavior. And so, there are a few things that Californians can do now to keep themselves safe. Today truly is the day for folks to take protective steps for themselves, their families, their neighbors ahead of the storm, so that we don't need all the folks on this call to do rescues, to be in communities. We are here, and it's our purpose to stay ready. But the more we can, be thoughtful and forward-leaning as Californians, the more we can keep everyone safe. So first, we would like to remind everyone to sign up for alerts from their county. That's the first line of defense for folks to get notifications about dangerous actions happening in their community. These alerts come from local officials on the ground, typically the sheriff or the county office of emergency services. Everyone can go to calalerts.org. That's a Cal OES maintained website where all 58 counties have information on where to sign up to get emergency notifications. These are opt-in systems. So for the most part, if you want to receive alerts in a crisis, you need to sign up for them. We encourage people to do that today. Secondly, we want to encourage the public to get information from trusted sources, like all the members of the media on this call. We are seeing more mis and disinformation online with this round of storms than we've seen for almost any disaster in the past. And Part of that is just our changing media environment of people watching things on TikTok and Instagram, or people trying to actively confuse Californians and mis and disinformation. We have both local folks here in the state, influencers who are well-meaning, who may post things that are not true. And then we actually have bad actors, both at the state and American level and outside the country, who are trying to use disasters as a way to turn Americans and Californians against each other. So want to encourage the public to get information from trusted sources, from law enforcement, from their local meteorologists, from the outlets like you all work for. So that's an important part of what we're doing. We also want to emphasize the wind portion of this. Want people to prepare for high winds, know that power could go out, get that lawn furniture in today. Anything that could fly, we want you to take that action today so it doesn't become an object that could hurt folks. We also want to emphasize that travel is a big part of it. Don't go up to the mountains if you can avoid it, particularly during the most intensive parts of the storm. Don't want to create a situation where Caltrans, CHP, or even the Guard need to go in and get people out because they tried to get up to the ski resorts. And we also want folks to take very basic steps like making sure your devices are charged, your flashlight's ready. Together we can get through this. Californians are resilient people. We know that we will persevere, get through these storms, but just by taking a few basic steps, everyone can keep themselves and their families safe during the coming days.